Good evening and welcome to our forum. I'm Debbie Kay, Vice President of the League of Women Voters of Portland. The League is a nonpartisan organization that works to help citizens make informed choices in elections. We do not endorse any candidate or political party, but rather we give voters the information they need to select a candidate. Membership information is available on our website and at the table at the back of the room. We thank the Carol and Velma Sailing Foundation, the Rose E. Tucker Charitable Trust, the Multnomah Bar Foundation, and Metro East Community Media and Paloma Clothing for their generous contributions to our education fund to make these forums possible. Today's forum is being recorded by Metro East Community Media. The forum will be available for on-demand viewing from a link on our website, lwvpdx.org, and from the website of Metro East Community Media, metroeast.org. To view the forums on local access cable television, see the playback schedule posted on our website and in your program. If you have not yet registered to vote, the last day to do so is tomorrow, April 26th. A League volunteer, I hope, will be here this evening to help you register. And if not, we have voter registration forms and can give you other instructions. You can you can contact your county elections office or register online. The online link is at our website, lwvpdx.org. Ballots will be mailed beginning April 27th, and I will now turn the forum over to our moderator. Thank you.
Good evening. Welcome to you all. Welcome to this forum for Portland City Commissioner Position 4. I'm your moderator, Leslie Moorhead, a member of the League of Women Voters of Portland. The League of Women Voters has invited all the candidates running for this office to be here this evening. Those who have joined us today and are seated at my left in the order in which they will appear on the ballot are Michael Durow, Steve Novick, Fred Stewart, James Lee, and Stuart Emmons. Welcome to you all. Thanks for joining us. Each of the candidates will give a 1 1/2 minute opening statement, followed by questions we have prepared. Each candidate will have 1 minute and 15 seconds to answer the questions. Our volunteer timekeeper sitting in the first row, thank you very much, ladies, will signal a 15-second warning and then a stop when the speaker's time has expired. The order in which we have selected candidates to answer the questions is random, except that we've ensured that as many as possible of you are able to answer first and last. To keep things more interesting, not all candidates will answer all questions, but all candidates will answer questions about the same topic areas. Following our prepared questions, we will have questions from the audience. Finally, each candidate will give a 1-minute closing statement. Now for our opening statements. Each candidate will have 1 1/2 minutes to introduce themselves and state their platform. We will do this in ballot order. Mr. Durow, you're first.
Hello. Can you hear? Oh, there it is. Hello, my name is Michael Durow. I want to thank the League of Women Voters. I want to thank Ms. Kay. I want to thank Ms. Moorhead for inviting us here and for giving us an opportunity to speak to the citizens of Portland. I think this is a very important election. I know we say every election is important, but this election is especially important in keeping our lifestyle in Portland and not making Portland into another San Francisco where only rich people can live. I think that in the last 4 to 6 years, the city council dropped the ball. They paid more attention to the Alberta streets and the Pearl districts than they did affordable housing and things that are necessary for ordinary people. Our streets are going to hell, and our infrastructure is just falling apart, basically, our bridges, everything. Now, part of that goes back to the federal government, but the city, thank you. But I think that the city council has a very important influence on that whole process, and I'd like to go into that.
Thank you. Mr. Novick.
First of all, thanks everybody for being here. I realize we're competing against both the mayoral debate, televised debate, and the Blazer game, so it's a real honor to have you here tonight. I'm Steve Novick. I've been in this job for a little over 3 years. One of my bureau assignments is the Transportation Bureau, and over the past 30 years, the city has neglected its transportation infrastructure. It's let the streets crumble, and it's tolerated too many places in the city where, because of gaps in the sidewalk and dangerous intersections, it's unsafe for kids to walk or bike to school or seniors to walk to bus stops. In this fiscal year, this council invested more in general fund in transportation than any council since 1985. And on this ballot, you will see a 10-cent temporary gas tax for street repairs and traffic safety, which will be the first serious movement on this issue we've seen in 30 years. I'm proud to have been persistent in trying to fix our transportation infrastructure. I really hope that all of you will support the gas tax. I'm also proud of my efforts to raise awareness of and do something about earthquake preparedness. And I'm proud to have been endorsed by the Portland firefighters and AFSCME and SEIU and the League of Conservation Voters and leaders like Jeff Merkley and Tina Kotek. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stewart, your opening statement.
Hello, everybody. My name is Fred Stewart, and I'm very happy to be invited here to meet you all. And like Steve, I really appreciate you guys choosing to be here with us instead of other choices. Most of my life, I've lived in Portland, with the exception of the first 11 years of my life and the time I spent in the U.S. Marine Corps. Portland has been my home. 95% of the people I would give my life for live in Portland. So to say that Portland's very important to me is an understatement. I have watched our city council depart from making decisions on the values that the majority of us have about what we want for Portland. Our streets are messed up. It's true. But I'm not seeing any creative or thoughtful approach to resolve that issue. We've got people who are struggling because they just can't afford their homes anymore. I'm not seeing any aggressiveness in nature to bring more housing online at an affordable pace. We've got people right now who are suffering so much that they're camping out on our streets. To me, they're being treated like savages. That's not what Portland does to other people. We don't just tell people to camp on the street, dig a hole for your sanitary reasons, and call it good. There was a time in Portland where we treated people like human beings, and I feel our current city council, they don't treat any of us like they really care about any of us. And the way we treat our homeless is a perfect example of that.
Thank you. Mr. Lee.
Hi, I'm Jim Lee. I want to thank the League for putting on this event so we don't have to watch the Blazers game or the mayoral event. Several months ago, David Bragdon, who's the former president of the Metro Council, came back to town, and he startled some people by making the statement that we could never get our transportation infrastructure right until we thoroughly reorganize the Oregon Department of Transportation. Now, I agree with David 100%. And in fact, I said the same thing in testimony to City Council during Sam Adams' tenure. And I've never really seen Sam do a take like that for anything. He was absolutely startled at it. I specifically said that we should require the resignation of the director, Matthew Garrett. Now, in the last 10 years or so, we have seen the Oregon Department of Transportation throw away $200 million on the aborted Columbia River crossing, but most people do not know that right in this room there was an even bigger fraud going down, namely a $250 million excess cost for the new Selwood Bridge. We know that because they originally had a fixed price bid of $90 million to do that. And ODOT instead went ahead and built a $330 million project. We could fix a lot of potholes with that money.
Thank you. Ms. Udaley, your opening statement.
Oh, it doesn't move here. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Chloe Daly. Can you hear me?
Punch the button.
Oh,
Chloe.
sorry.
All right.
There it goes.
It's Stuart's fault.
Yeah, it's all my fault.
Okay. Hi, I'm Chloe Daly. So, born and raised in Portland, I've been running an independent bookstore for the last 21 years. I've been very involved in a variety of progressive causes. My main focus for the last decade or so has been disability advocacy, but in the last couple of years, my attention has turned to affordable housing and tenants' rights because of my own personal experience and because of the housing crisis we're in the midst of, which I've never seen anything like. I am running to represent people that Portland is not working for, which include poor and middle-income residents, renters, people with disabilities. I could go on and on. I think I'll just end it there.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Emmons.
Thank you. Thank you to the League for sponsoring this event. I'm really happy about the Oregonian endorsement that I got last Saturday at 9:30 this morning. There was a letter coming from the Nova campaign that was talking about a right-wing conspiracy. It was a very divisive letter. It talked about things that really didn't have anything to do with the endorsement. There's nothing right-wing or left-wing about this. This was about an ability to listen and to build bridges between people and get things done and make progress. It implied that I was a right-winger. I am very much of a progressive, and I believe I represent Portland values, and especially with the environment and with equity. My record of accomplishment speaks for itself, especially around affordable housing and homelessness. I'm not into excuses. I'm into getting things accomplished. If I had Steve's record of accomplishments, I wouldn't run for re-election. I love this city, and I want to help lead it through challenges in the next 4 years by listening and collaborating with the community. Thank you.
Thank you all. And now for our first question. The topic area is the city budget. But first, note that half of you will be asked a question about this topic that focuses on revenue, and the other half of you will be asked the same question but with the focus on spending. You will be called upon in random order. So do pay attention to the focus and the order of the question. The focus is either revenue or spending, so please answer accordingly. Here is the question. There is a strong perception that the city spends more money than it brings in. Focusing on revenue, what are your thoughts in keeping the city budget financially healthy? Mr. Novick, we'll start with you.
Well, we do have a revenue problem. This year, we're looking at the budget, where in order to balance the budget, we are looking at potentially having to make cuts in parks, in fire, in police.
Mr. Novick, I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. We are looking at a budget this year where, in order to balance the budget, we face the prospect of having to make cuts in parks or fire or police in order to balance the budget. One thing that I would like to fix, though it would take legislative and statewide voter action, is our insane property tax system, which is very unequal in that people in different parts of the city pay different property taxes depending on what their properties were worth in 1995. That's the effect of Measure 50. If we simply had a rule that no property was assessed at less than 50% of its real market value, then the city would have an extra $12 million a year. If we eliminated Measure 50 entirely and all areas of the city paid what they would pay under Measure 5, which most of East Portland does, the city would have an extra $100 million a year. So property tax reform should, I think, be at the forefront of the legislature, and I'm calling everybody to join me in asking the legislature to reform the property tax system.
Thank you. Ms. Udaly.
On which side?
Revenue.
Okay.
Keeping the city financially healthy with revenue.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I feel like I'm reaching. So, I hate to be the one to always bring things back to housing, but we're spending an extraordinary amount of money on our homeless and affordable housing crisis. It costs up to 5 times more to serve someone who is homeless than it does to serve them in supported housing. And this crisis is creating a huge burden on our emergency services and social services. So one way I would alleviate that is actually deal with our housing crisis. I agree with Steve. I mean, we are struggling under some statewide issues such as property taxes that are severely impacting our ability to maintain our infrastructure, fund our schools, et cetera. I support a Better Oregon, which will raise the minimum corporate tax on companies doing $25 million or more in Oregon, which will mostly fund education, but again, go towards alleviating some of the pressure on our budget.
Thank you. Question for Mr. Lee.
This is on the revenue question again, right?
Revenue, yes, thank you.
Yes. At several other forums, I have broached an idea which some people probably found paradoxical, the famous or infamous negative income tax. And the reason I did that, because the present property tax enables in a way, the destruction of lower to middle income homes, as happened in my neighborhood where we had a $250,000 house torn down, thrown in the landfill, and 2 $500,000 houses built in its place. Now, the city, the county, and the school district make out like bandits on this because the property taxes go up. But instead of having a house where you could have one middle-class family live, you now have 2 houses that take 2 high-income earners. The negative income tax works by having a large exemption, say $10,000. Above that, you would pay 5% on the net above that. And below that, you would get a subsidy, such as if you earn 0, you get a $5,000 subsidy. If you earn $5,000, you would get a $2,500 subsidy. That would kill 2 birds with 1 stone, would help the housing crisis and also help the homeless. Thank you.
Thank you. Here's the question for the other 3 of you. Same question, emphasis on spending. There is a strong perception that the city spends more money than it brings in. Focusing on spending, what are your thoughts in keeping the city budget financially healthy? Mr. Stewart.
It's about priorities. I live over in inner north and northeast Portland, and what I like to say, the neighborhood that Mr. Ainsworth built. I live in Piedmont. Just this year, between Killingsworth and Albina, the city of Portland spent about $8 million to absolutely redo the street, the sidewalk, and the drainage for Killingsworth between MLK and actually it goes all the way up to interstate. We've got houses in this neighborhood. We got houses all over the city, 59 miles of unpaved streets and over 100 miles of unpaved sidewalks. Some of those streets and some of those sidewalks are east of 82nd. Some of them are on the west side, where if they were paved, we would be able to build housing there. It's about priorities. To me, that was wasted money. It looks good. I like driving down the street in my neighborhood, but the street that was there before looked good too. I would have much rather the city spend that $8 million in a place that would do us good. The biggest problem with our spending in Portland is we're not spending our money where it's most needed. And cutting fire right now, cutting police right now, it's absolutely wrong.
Mr. Emmons.
Let me push the button. I am from the private sector. I'm a little different than many of the commissioners on the council right now, and so I think differently. I think about how to run a business, how to compete, how to streamline, how to get things to work better, how to make people who are working in the bureaus work smarter. I took the city budget and I tried to get it onto one page, which was quite a bit of work from a booklet, and I showed it to some private sector bankers and financial planners, and they were, a little bit stymied by it. So the first thing I would like to do is I'd like to have an overview of the budget from other people besides people in government. I also, for instance, the PBOT budget by what's called Byzantine by Ted Wheeler. I would also look to bureaus streamlining and having bureaus work better together to get the best use of our taxpayer dollar. Thank you.
And Mr. Duro.
I'm very concerned about changing the law and getting city government another $100 million or another $20 million or whatever the amount is right now, because they don't seem to be prioritizing what they're doing with the money they already have. A lot of our problem results from not being able to keep our eye on the ball. It's like we've got a government that are squirrels, playing squirrels and dogs, you know. They find a new pretty thing they want to do, and that's all they want to do. They're not taking care of the business that's at hand. We need to, first of all, stop the bleeding. Someone once said that if you're in a hole, and you're digging, stop digging. Then we need to cut back where we can. If I get on the city government, I'm willing to cut my salary by 25% towards the end of bringing down our costs. People in government don't necessarily make. Sorry.
Thank you. And now for our second question. The topic is about population growth in Portland. Again, note that half of you will be asked a question about this topic that focuses on housing, and the other half of you will be asked the same question that focuses on jobs. You will be called again in random order, so do pay attention to the focus of the question, jobs or housing, and please answer accordingly. Here's the question. Estimates indicate that over 200,000 people will be added to Portland over the next 2 decades. Focusing on housing, how would you manage this growth? Mr. Stewart.
Well, first I'd get back into planning the city like we used to. I'd look at developing more along east of 82nd. I'd look definitely to get more of our streets paved and more of our sidewalks paved. I was an investment banker. I worked for Macquarie Bank for 6 years back during the 2000s. And I understand that no institutional bank is part of any of the major developments here in Portland. This is all hedge fund and private money, and those guys aren't developing projects where there's no streets or sidewalks. We need to start developing more housing where the land is a little cheaper. The city needs to do more land banking. It needs to be planning for the future, not the future just with wealthy Portlanders or wealthy people moving to Portland, but we've got to be inclusive of people who are lower middle class, working poor, and the poor. And that means we're going to have to start land banking on properties right now where we know the land is a little cheaper. We're going to have to start rezoning 82nd to make it more opportunities to develop small businesses that can hire. It could be one of the economic engines that drives the future of the east side of Portland. But most importantly, we got to start doing land banking today.
Mr. Emmons.
I am a urban designer, and I think this is a perfect time to put an urban designer on city council. This expertise has been lacking, and this is the time that we especially need it. The numbers that you have said, Ms. Moorhead, are startling. Inside the urban growth boundary, it's going to be apparently 750,000 people in the next 20 years, and we need excellence in planning, and we've certainly fallen off track with that. I want to strengthen that planning bureau, and hopefully I would get that. As for housing, I've been working on affordable housing and housing projects for my whole career. I know what it takes to make a housing project happen, and I believe that we need to streamline within the city to allow more housing to be built and reform design review as well. So I want to build more neighborhoods, more livable neighborhoods, and keep Portland, Portland. I believe that we can keep our urban growth boundary and do really smart expansion of our neighborhoods that are walkable and keep this city the special city that it is. Thank you.
Mr. Lee.
This is a difficult question. I have an answer to it, but I probably would be run out of here if I gave the answer. Much of the policies of our federal government, one half of which supported by one political party, the other half supported by the other political party, has created a situation which concentrates wealth. I'll just put it this way. Lawyers marry lawyers, grocery clerks marry grocery clerks, homeless people marry homeless people. It's called assortative mating. And this means that there is a natural migration of social class to the wealthy. Now that, as I said, in the neighborhood that I live in, we have houses being torn down, perfectly habitable houses, being replaced by houses that can be inhabited only by two very high income earners. Fine? Yeah.
Thank you. Now, here's the other side of that question. Estimates indicate that over 200,000 people will be added to Portland over the next 2 decades. Focusing on jobs, how will you manage this growth? Ms. Udaly.
I mean, jobs and housing are kind of inextricably combined. Right now, huge problem that we're facing is a lack of workforce housing, and that our market rate rents are no longer affordable to households earning under 120% of MFI, so it's hard for me to talk about jobs without talking about housing. One of my legislative priorities as a commissioner would be to lift the preemption on cities and municipalities setting their own minimum wage. It's really an anti-progressive measure, and it's ridiculous that the entire state of Oregon, despite the fact of how much cost of living varies from region to region, has the same minimum wage. Right now in Portland, you need to earn $15 an hour to afford a room in a house. And we're gonna get close to that in 6 or 7 years. It's not enough. Employers are having a hard time retaining good staff because of lack of affordable housing. And I'm sorry, I really should talk more about jobs, but I mean, it's just, like I said, it's inextricable. It kind of doesn't matter what we do with jobs if none of our workforce can afford to live in the city.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Duro.
Hello. I think what we need is a $15 minimum wage, because the people who are already making over $20 and $30 an hour are doing just fine. It's the people that can't even afford to get into a house that are having a problem. Right now, we're at least 25,000 low-income units short. We've got 1,000 people coming to the urban area every single month. And we also need to change, so we need to change the minimum wage, and we need to fully realize the use of inclusionary zoning throughout the city, not just in parts of the city, but throughout the city. Right now, we're putting in low-income housing, but we're putting it in where people like it to be. We need to put it in all the areas that are available, because if you just put it in part of the city, what you're going to do is you're going to cause a problem where certain neighborhoods are taken advantage of. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Novick.
So my friend Joe Courtwright, the economist, would say that we're living in an era where jobs follow the talented people, particularly talented, more or less younger people. And as he's argued, and we're seeing his prophecies being borne out recently, employers will start up or open offices in places where talented young people want to be. And right now, talented young people want to be in places where they can walk and bike and take transit to work and to play. So continuing to invest in walkable, bikeable neighborhoods, which includes having walking and biking infrastructure, continue to invest in a strong transit system will help strengthen our appeal for employers and create more jobs. We also, of course, need to strengthen our education system. Now, obviously, the school district and the community colleges have their own separate governments, but one of the things I've done is worked very closely with, for example, PCC to make sure that as we add more high-capacity transit lines, they serve PCC Sylvania and PCC Southeast.
Thank you. That was the end. Thank you. Thank you all. Okay. We will now have questions from the audience. Every candidate will answer each question, and again, this is in random order. Here's the first question. What should the city of Portland be doing to prepare for the big earthquake that the New Yorker article was about? And first on my list is Mr. Lee.
Well, there's a lot you can do. Bridges, transportation, very important issues. I'm a physics person. I think I have I'm not an engineer, but I have the technical qualifications to see that the Bureau of Transportation, which would be just completely crucial in the event of a large earthquake, is properly administered from a technical point of view. The budget, I believe, is something like $325 million. It sounds like a lot of money, but compared with the waste that has been done by the Oregon Department of Transportation, I think we could use some of that $450 million that they wasted for earthquake preparedness. Thank you very much.
Mr. Novick.
Well, we need to strengthen city assets so that they survive the earthquake. The Water Bureau, for example, is going to build new pipes under the Willamette River to replace the pipes that currently go across the river, which we think would break in an earthquake, so that after the earthquake, the west side will have water. We need to do what we can to help prepare our citizens. We recently won a grant from FEMA to help pay for half of a couple of hundred retrofits around the city to help subsidize people who want to retrofit their homes so they'll survive the earthquake. We need to work with the federal and state governments to make sure that the oil companies with those big tanks on the Willamette River take steps to make sure that those tanks don't break, causing both an environmental disaster and also eliminating the fuel that we depend on at this point to fuel our economy. Oddly, perhaps the most significant thing that I've done for earthquake preparedness is have, along with my wife Rachel, a conversation with my wife's cousin. Rachel was working in emergency preparedness a couple of years ago, and I had the Bureau of Emergency Management. My wife's cousin came out, visited us. We gave her an earful about the earthquake. Then a year later, she got a job with the New Yorker and wrote a blockbuster article. So the lesson of that is never underestimate your spouse's relatives.
Thank you. Ms. Udaly.
Well, Steve covered quite a number of things that we need to do. We have a real problem with unreinforced masonry buildings in Portland. I think there's 1,600 to 1,800 buildings. Some of those building owners have formed a coalition and want the city to pay for their retrofits, which I don't support. But I would support very low interest long-term loans for those building owners. They've known since the 90s that these seismic upgrades are required and they need to act on it. I'd also love to see gas shutoff valves for individual homes and subsidies for low-income households to make their homes safer. More funding for the new neighborhood groups. I'm sorry, I've forgotten the name. There's a name like Rise or Fire for these groups that are getting intensive training for emergency preparedness and are going to be helping their neighbors, because we know that it could take days or weeks for emergency services to reach us. So we really need to make sure that our citizens or residents are informed and prepared.
Thank you. Mr. Emmons.
Thank you. I went through the Northridge. Oh, I'll push the button. I went through the Northridge earthquake in Los Angeles, so I've been through a 6.7 earthquake, and I've been through the event and also what happened afterwards. I've also done a lot of architectural work in unreinforced masonry buildings and new buildings. Some essential service. There were about 5 fire stations that I did. We are not ready. We need to prioritize and minimize the loss of life when we have an event. We should not go focus on houses right away. We should go after big buildings where there might be a lot of people in them. And if they're unreinforced buildings, we need to especially address them. We need to obviously go after our infrastructure to make sure that water and gas and other and roads are serviceable, and our airports. And also, we need to have shelters for people who have become homeless because of the event. And then that could be a large number if we get an 8 or a larger earthquake. And I think schools should be absolutely a focus from now on to be seismically braced to become large-scale shelters for people after an earthquake. Thank you.
Mr. Giroux.
Yes, I think that what we need to do is we need to realize that an earthquake isn't a small thing, and a lot of these unreinforced masonry buildings are not going to survive. In fact, most of them aren't going to survive if we have like an 8.5 or a 9. So what we need to do is we need to have emergency supplies in place. We have over 200 parks in the city of Portland. Each one of those parks in each neighborhood should have a certain amount of tents, a certain amount of bottled water, a certain amount of basic rations that don't need to be cooked, that are secured, so that when there is an earthquake, the people whose houses are flattened have a place to go and have a place where there's some semblance of emergency supplies until the rest of this country can get here, because it'll take days. Yeah, and we also need to start preparing for ourselves. And that's something that, whether we get a subsidy or don't get a subsidy, if you want your family to survive, that's very, very important.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Stewart.
First off, I would focus on the public safety of our citizens. About 3 or 4 years ago, the citizens of Portland passed a school bond measure to basically retrofit some schools so they'd be earthquake ready. That did not happen. Not one of our high schools is expected to handle an earthquake past 6.5. Not one. We are not ready at all to protect ourselves from any type of major earthquake. We can't do nothing about our tank farm. Our tank farm is gone. Pretty much expected any earthquake above 6.5. Pretty much the land under it's going to liquefy. And if that liquefaction doesn't get rid of it, then they're expecting the mudslide to get rid of it. So we got to do something about that right now. The issue about utility services to the west side, major issue. West side's basically going to be cut off. So we need to look at emergency responses right now. We need to start building new high schools right now, tearing down some of the ones we got right now, and making them focuses of places where people can be given services. We need to beef up our emergency response services, starting with 911. We need to get tools to our fire department and our emergency response teams to be able to service us at the hospital level on out.
Thank you. Here's the second question from our audience. What is your position on the shared economy such as Uber? And if I may be so bold as to add my own second part of this question, what specific City of Portland policies or codes would have to be added or changed to support your position on the shared economy? Ms. Udaly.
I'm not a big fan of the sharing economy. I like to call it the sharecropping economy. I think it sounds like a wonderful idea. Let's share our resources. But as we've seen with Uber, it's undermining good jobs in our city. With Airbnb, it's contributing to our housing crisis. With Airbnb, we need to start by actually just enforcing the rules. We have hundreds, possibly a couple thousand hosts who haven't bothered getting a permit. Inspections or complaint, it's an entirely complaint-based system. We have hundreds, possibly over 1,000 illegal hosts on Airbnb, and those are people who are renting out their housing full-time when there's a requirement that you actually, it's owner-occupied 9 months out of the year. And that means they've taken several hundred to over 1,000 former residences and turned them into businesses. And when we think about the fact that our vacancy rate is, I think, under 2%, that's significant.
Thank you. Mr. Lee.
It's another difficult question. I want to point out I'm a physicist. I'm a member of the Acoustical Society of America. And recently we got a notice from our professional magazine called Physics Today asking us to figure out or to write a story or an essay about what physics would be like 100 years from now. So I've been doing that for the last week or so. And I've come to the conclusion that it's going to be dependent almost entirely on what kind of a society we have in 100 years. I think I can see the way several things are going. I don't think we will have a society of consumer capitalism like we have now. There has never been a wealthy, powerful empire society that has ever lasted for a very long time. The obvious example would be the Roman Empire, and I wouldn't want to compare us to that right now. But I think we just have to keep our eyes and ears open and do our best to figure out where we are going to be.
Thank you. Mr. Giroux.
Yeah, I think that what the issue is with the shared economy is a difference in philosophy. There's a lot of young people that have come, and it's actually not a bad idea, to the conclusion that all I need to live is a job and a cell phone. And I'll find some place to sleep, and I'll find some place to eat, and I'll borrow somebody's car. And this would produce a society with a lot less stresses on the environment. But some people are always, no matter what the economic change is, some people are always left behind. What's happening to our taxi industry is deplorable, because the fact that the taxi industry was set up or was reformed a few years ago so that disabled people could get rides, and a lot of this Uber stuff is not providing the same infrastructure for disabled people. And so I think that we need to work really hard on integrating the shared economy.
Thank you. Mr. Stewart.
I think the city has been way too soft on these new economies, both Airbnb, Light, and Uber. Uber has been allowed to come into Portland and have its own set of regulations separate from the cab industry, giving it an unfair advantage. I think everybody should play by the same same rules. There should not be a difference between Uber and Radio Cab, or Uber, or any other cab company. It should be a complete open market. Furthermore, I think Uber is not paying enough for the damage they're doing to our roads. They like to boast recently, when I met a couple of their executives, about 2 weeks ago, they'd have about 7,000 drivers in Portland. We do not have 7,000 drivers at any of our other cab companies combined. At least half of their drivers do not live in Portland. About a quarter don't even live in Oregon. So they're not paying any taxes to use our roads. And this gas tax that Steve Novick is pushing, it's not going to affect them at all. Matter of fact, they're actually laughing about it. I don't know how they act when they're in the same room with Steve. So no, I like these economies. I want more of them. But I want a level playing field, and I want them to pay their fair share to the people of Portland to use our infrastructure. I do not feel they are, especially Airbnb. One of the major reasons we got the problem with housing right now is Airbnb.
Mr. Emmons.
I am interested in the shared economy. I am interested in innovation that is fair and improves the quality of life. But I agree with Fred that people need to play by the rules. In Uber's case, Mr. Novick said, fine, Uber can come in if they play by our rules. And there was a little chat on Charlie Hale's dining room table with Mark Wiener, and then there was a vote to let Uber come in on their rules that was different from other rules. And so all of a sudden, our cab companies, people who are sometimes first-generation Americans just trying to make a living, are at risk of losing their entire business. Uber's insurance, background checks, and maintenance are different than our cab companies, and that's wrong. Airbnb is threatening our affordable housing, and I think that's wrong. I am open to a shared economy if it comes from collaborating with the community and if it's really fair for Portlanders.
And Mr. Novick.
Just one thing I want to clarify is Uber is required to provide wheelchair accessible service, as are all of the cab companies and the other so-called TNCs. What concerns me the most about the so-called shared economy is having more and more people working who are not classified as employees and therefore are not getting contributions to Social Security for their employer. They are not guaranteed minimum wage. They might not have workers' comp. Now, who is or is not an employee is something that the state and federal governments regulate, not the city. But I wrote to Brad Avakian, the state labor commissioner, months ago, asking if he would take a look at potentially classifying the Uber drivers as employees. Now, I didn't think that it made sense to protect our existing taxi companies from competition because, in part, they don't treat their employees, their drivers as employees either. They have the same problem. With Airbnb, I share the concern that the proliferation of Airbnbs might be reducing housing affordability. When I voted to allow them in and be taxed, I said that we should take a look at that issue down the line. The problem we had with prohibiting it was that it was happening all over the place anyway, and we would have to build a big enforcement bureaucracy which costs money in order to stop it.
Thank you. We will go to the next audience question. This is a very packed ballot, all of you and others. What is the one thing that differentiates you from the other candidates? Mr. Dureau.
Thank you. The thing that differentiates me from the other candidates, well, there seems to be a lot. First of all, of people, my family has been in Portland since 1945, when my grandmother settled with her children here. My mother settled here in 1980 with her children. But my background is a little different. I wasn't born in Portland. I was born overseas. My father was in the military. I've traveled all over the world. I speak 3 languages, and I just have a different perspective. I have a perspective of somebody who's maybe a little bit more like the people that are growing up right now. I was one of the first generations of the mixed people, and it's just, I see a lot of things in common with young people today.
Thank you. Mr. Lee.
I'll say what I said in the last question. I'm a physicist. I'm a fairly quite a numerate person. I tend to see situations as they are, and I was absolutely astounded that I seem to be the only person in town that picked up on the public information about the fact that Multnomah County was paying $330 million to rebuild the Selwood Bridge, when before that they had a firm $90 million bid from Bechtel, built the Red Line out to the airport. Also, when you start comparing, say, the new Selwood Bridge with the Tillicum Bridge is about the same span and the same width, but it has to carry twice the loads because of the trains, and yet it cost $135 million. So we got, TriMet got twice the bridge for about a third the price of the Selwood Bridge. And that's the kind of thing I could do, the kind of, shall we say, numerate analysis from my technical background. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Novick.
First of all, I'm the really short guy with a left hand made of stainless steel. But beyond that, I would say that I'm persistent in my pursuit of priorities. For the past 30 years, as I said before, the city has known that we're underinvesting in our transportation system, both in basic street repair and traffic safety. And every few years, a transportation commissioner has proposed a way to raise revenue for the transportation system and gotten some political resistance and then given up. And every year we wait, the problem has gotten worse. A couple of years ago, the mayor and I proposed a way to raise revenue for the transportation system. We didn't do the greatest job of it, and we got slapped down. But I persisted, because I didn't want to add to this 30-year legacy of failure. And now we have a measure on the ballot to raise money for street repair and critical traffic safety projects that's supported by East Portland activists, by activists for safe bike and ped transportation, by the business community, by a great coalition. Check the voters pamphlet, and we will win, and we will begin doing some work in this problem that's been neglected for 30 years. I think that's the sort of persistent leadership on community priorities that you should look for in the city council.
Thank you. Ms. Daly.
Well, I'm the only woman sitting up here. That's, if I really only have one difference to talk about. Oh, thank you, Jim. Studies have shown that more women in government result in more progressive policymaking and legislation, regardless of their political affiliation. I'm the mother of a child with a disability with a strong background in disability advocacy. I have been a small business owner for over 20 years. I'm also a cost burden renter. And the reason that I'm running is because I see a disconnection between our elected leaders and everyday residents of Portland. And I feel that I am more representative of our average residents than some of the other people running. And as I've grown fond of saying, we elected a barkeeper as mayor and we loved him. I don't think electing a bookseller as city commissioner is too much of a stretch.
Thank you. Mr. Emmons.
I have an ability to set priorities and chew gum and walk at the same time. And I don't want to just focus on doing street infrastructure. We have a lot of important things to address in our city all at once. We have homelessness. It's outrageous that we still have 1,800 people on our street, and we're talking about crosswalks in the Pearl District, diagonal crosswalks. We have an affordable housing crisis. There are friction points with people with the tenants union and developers and whatever. We need to build bridges. We have issues with equity and police. We have issues with the environment, with Superfund and the air, and with streets, and the comp plan is coming out in 2 years, which I have a lot of experience with. We need to be able to work together and make progress and do these things all simultaneously.
Thank you. Mr. Stewart.
I'm a very unique Portlander and a complete beneficiary of the values that I still talk about a lot in the city of Portland. I don't think any other city would allow a person like me to exist. I've worked for myself as a banker. I've been a member of a union. I've shined shoes. I've been a renter. I've been a landlord. I've been a banker. I've done so much. I'm only 51 years old. That's what sets me aside. And then on top of that, I happen to be a black male, something we have not had on city council since 1992. Right now, we've got a city council that feels it can speak for everybody, and we can tell by the fact that last year 17 black males were murdered on our streets that they don't speak for everybody. So like I said, I think I'm a unique opportunity for the people of Portland. I'm made by the people of Portland, and I'm very thankful for every opportunity that I've been able to do. You know, when you look at me, you're looking at a guy who was able to walk outside of his mother's house and change the neighborhood, sold over 751 homes in the neighborhood my mother lives in, over 1,000 transactions, developed commercial buildings. I funded commercial buildings. I almost helped our good friend Eric Stinn buy PGE. So that's why.
Thank you. Thank you. We will now have the 1-minute closing statements from each candidate. again in the order in which they appear on the ballot. Mr. Duro,
Closing statement?
closing statement from you, please.
Closing statement. My name is Michael Duro. I'm running for city council, and I want to represent the people in the city of Portland. What's been happening a little bit is that there has been a little bit going around that I'm a perennial candidate. I'm not a perennial candidate. I'm an interested candidate. I think that these races are important. I think that every single incumbent should face someone, at least one person in the primary and one person in the general. And if nobody else is running, I actually enjoy doing this. This isn't my last race, and I'll be back. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Novick.
I'm very proud that the Oregonian Editorial Board, an editorial board that routinely calls for the destruction of unions, that opposes any measure to address climate change, that opposed paid sick leave, I'm proud the Oregonian Editorial Board was against me. And I promise to keep on pushing for policies that will annoy the Oregonian Editorial Board. I'm proud to have joined Amanda Fritz, our leader, on paid sick leave, and I'll be proud to join her when we pass an ordinance which prohibits employers from engaging in abusive scheduling where their employees don't know when their next shift is. I'm proud to be supporting a gas tax which will make it safer for kids to walk and bike to school and for seniors to walk to bus stops, even though the Oregonian thinks that those things aren't worth spending money on. So I will continue to push for progressive causes. I will continue to annoy the Oregonian Editorial Board, and I ask for your vote.
Mr. Stewart.
Steve Novick has absolutely let all of us down in here that have been liberals or Democrats. I registered as a Democrat here in Portland in 1983, and then immediately joined the U.S. Marines. So imagine a Democrat in the United States Marine Corps. I'm a very proud liberal in Portland, very proud progressive person in Portland. Steve was my champion until he became my city commissioner. He is not going to do better, period. He has absolutely telegraphed to all of us that he is very proud of every failing he's done for us. Nothing he has said is going to be better than what we've already seen. Now, if Steve bowed out tonight and said, I'm going to run against Earl Blumenauer or somebody in 2 years, he's got my vote. He'd be an excellent senator. But he has no business on Portland City Council.
Thank you. Mr. Lee.
I'm Jim Lee. One of the nice things about running for council is you meet so many like-minded, fine people, and I can see several people sitting at this table now who I would not mind seeing sitting in position 4 next to Amanda Fritz on the city council. I've watched the city council, testified before it many times, notably on such projects as the Performing Arts Center. And I know that when you get a good, coherent city council, in spite of the fact that we have this strange form of government where the commissioners also have to administer a bureau. I've seen it, for example, with the Bud Clark Council, when we had Bud Clark, Mildred Schwab, Margaret Strawn, Mike Lindbergh, and Charles Jordan on there. I think the situation now is such that we can put together a really good council, and I would very much enjoy serving the people of Portland on it. Thank you.
Ms. Daly.
A year ago, February, I stumbled upon an ad on Craigslist for a tiny home in the heart of Hawthorne. It was 165 square feet with a toilet across from the sink, and it was renting for $950 plus an undisclosed amount of labor required by the landlord. That inspired me to start a housing group, which I will call The Shed for short, because there is an expletive in the name and I don't want to offend anyone. And that group has grown to over 2,000 Portlanders, most of whom are renters, many of whom are cost-burdened like myself, and some of whom have been forced out of the city or even become homeless in the 14 months that we've existed. It's led me to give invited testimony at the Emergency Housing Forum at ERCO, give testimony in Salem, and give testimony at City Hall. There really is no more urgent issue than our housing crisis because it's impacting every part of our residents' lives. It's impacting our economy, our schools, even our environment.
Thank you. Mr. Emmons.
I love Portland, and I am concerned about where we're going. Our current city council has been divisive and lacks a keel. If you want to create gridlock, run again for the Senate. Our city has too many important issues that need addressing now. I have had a box seat to what works and what doesn't work in the city council. I want to listen to the community. I want to collaborate, and I want to work together to get results in the next 4 years.
Thank you. Thank you all. This concludes the League of Women Voters Forum on Portland City Commissioners position number 4. We thank each of the candidates for participating in our forum and also thank our timekeepers and our other volunteers. Please check our website, lwvpdx.org, to view all of our forums on demand and for replay dates, times, and channels for local access cable TV. Do pick up the League of Women Voters Voters Guide at your local public library. And we also have plenty of copies in the back of the room, or the elections office or the New Seasons Market. Online, you can check vote411.org for a guide to your personal ballot. Election Day is May 17th. As in all Oregon elections, you will receive a mail-in ballot. Ballots must be mailed back early or delivered to an official drop-off site anywhere in Oregon no later than 8 p.m. on Tuesday, November 4th for the general election. Postmarks do not count. This is Leslie Moorhead for the League of Women Voters of Portland. Thank you for watching. Please be an informed voter and remember that your vote counts. Thank you.